if Alex Cora is only going to be looking at trying to take advantage of the prime years of his managerial career and doesn't want to stick around for 20 years, do you really want to be a part of a rebuild here when you could say, I don't know, be with the Chicago White Sox, which is a mistake they made a couple of years ago, go to the White Sox and have a team that's pretty much ready to make the World Series if they have a manager.
Or San Diego, a team that kind of spent a bunch of money and seems to be underperforming. But listening to that again, it was interesting, more of a timeline. It was just, because he had mentioned to me, my son's 12 years old, right? Wanting to watch as many games as you can at that age. His kid's 5. So you start doing the timeline, you're like, wait, does he want 5 more years, 6 more years? Does he want to be there in that 11, 12 range, which is awesome. Don't get me wrong for your kid at that age. So now you start wondering, okay, if it is 5 or 6 more years of managing, because in that interview he talked about he could see himself in the front office. He loves it in Venezuela when he did Puerto Rico for his
GM of
for the GM of
World
that
Baseball
team.
Classic.
If it's 5 or 6 more years and you don't like the way things are looking for the last couple of years at the deadline or the talent you have on the field, is this where you want to spend the last 5 or 6 years?
No, no chance. And here's the thing. I don't think that Cora's leaving. He's got 2 more years on his contract. I certainly think he'll be here next year. This time next year will be a much more interesting conversation. But this, to me, Lou and Giles, this is pointing out the whole long-term issue that we're talking about. What is this team going to look like?
Right.
And if it's continuing on the path that it's on now, and I'm Alex Cora, I'm not interested in rebuilding in Boston. I'm going somewhere else where I can win right away. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And despite this team being in last place right now, I don't put that on Alex Cora. I think we're all in agreement that it's because of roster construction. However, the players do bear some responsibility, especially for what we saw over the weekend. I still believe, and we've had this conversation before, I think we had it last year when they were overperforming, when they were overachieving the first half of that year. How many wins is Alex Cora worth to the Red Sox? Because I think he's somewhere around, it felt like 10 wins at the time. Now, maybe it's not in a year like this, but he's still worth at least a handful of wins. And I still make the point that you could do a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah. Listen, he's not perfect. I think the value that he brings to me is the communication, whether it's with his players, with his teammates, with the front office, the analytics department. You need that now in this game, right? To take what the analytics is telling you, to try to converse to the player, to try to translate that into baseball terms, trust it, this, everything else. The other one, and I do believe this matters a lot in this town, he is amazing with the media. I think that matters, or it should matter for the Boston Red Sox. Ron Renneke. You know what I mean? You want Ron Renneke talking to the media, doing interviews? I think that does matter, but it's the communication skill that he has. He's not perfect. Nobody's perfect. You can second-guess any manager in the big leagues, but the communication's second to none.
Yeah, and just look at what he's dealing with this year. He's got 3 relievers. He's got 3 relievers he can trust, and he's tried to make that work all season. He's had AAA guys at any one time in right field, center field, first base, third base, second, so he's had to deal with all of that. He's kept the team afloat. I think if there's a criticism, it's what we mentioned earlier. The players have not been shy about voicing their criticism of the front office, and I have to think that they recognize that their manager probably feels some of those same things, and now it's kind of open season. I think the manager sometimes needs to be able to pull back and say, we just got to deal with what's in front of us instead of feeling sorry for ourselves.
You could also put, dealing with contract negotiations with your 2 best players on that list as well, because it's another thing to just try to tell Xander Bogaerts, Rafael Devers, hey, don't worry about that. Let's just go out there. Let's win today. So you put that on the list as well for Alex Cora. It's a lot. And you can understand why a season like this would be so stressful, where you look around and you say, And then on the other side of it, too, is this who Chaim Bloom wants long-term? Is this who ownership wants long-term?
Well, I think that's a big question. I think ownership really liked Alex Cora.
Yes, exactly.
There's no question about it. Did Chaim Bloom? We don't know. You know what I mean? He can say all the right things. I met Alex Cora, he blew me away. He's this, he's that. That's great. But we don't really know if he's his guy. I know Sam Folds' name came up a couple of years ago. So that's why I think Tom John brought up a good point. Next year at this time, I don't know what's going to happen to Xander this offseason, but next year at this time, it's going to be like Devers. It's going to get heated, right? Is he still here? Is there a contract extension? This guy's going to have 1 more year. He's got 2 years, right? 23, 24. At some point next year, you're going to sit there and say, okay, we're either going to extend him or make a lame duck. You don't do that either, right? Yep. So next year it could come to a head because you're looking at Devers. What's the future of the organization? Do I want to be here? So this guy might be thinking a similar thing.
Yeah, and again, I'll say it. If I'm Alex Cora, I'm evaluating all of my options at that point.